From the ashes of a fallen empire, a spy emerged from the cold, obsessed with restoring Russian greatness. His methods were ruthless, his vision absolute. He rebuilt the fortress of power, crushed dissent, tamed the oligarchs, and rearmed the Russian bear, preparing it for a new era of dominance. Then came the ultimate gamble, a catastrophic miscalculation that isolated Russia and changed the world order forever, leaving a trail of uncertainty behind. Now, the full story can be told. A special ATM documentary will reveal all. Tune in and watch now to understand the hidden truths within.
They report the chaos. We reveal the agenda.
Good evening, and welcome to ATM. For over 2 decades, one man has dominated Russia and challenged the world order with cold, calculated precision. Vladimir Putin, former KGB agent, ruthless strategist, the inscrutable face of a resurgent, often aggressive Russia. But who is the man behind the mask? What drives his deep-seated mistrust of the West, his obsession with restoring Russian greatness, and his willingness to gamble everything on the geopolitical chessboard? To understand Putin, you must understand the trauma of the 1990s. As a KGB agent stationed in East Germany, he witnessed the collapse of the Soviet Union firsthand, what he would later call the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the century. He returned to a Russia in chaos, hyperinflation, oligarchs plundering state assets, a humiliating loss of global status, and a sense of national betrayal. This period forged his core beliefs, the necessity of a strong, centralized state, the inherent untrustworthiness of the West, and the imperative to restore Russia's rightful place as a great power. His quiet, disciplined rise through the chaos was underestimated by almost everyone. His ascent to the presidency in 1999 was almost accidental, chosen by Boris Yeltsin's inner circle as a seemingly pliable successor who could protect them. They believed they could control the quiet man from the security services. It was a colossal miscalculation. Almost immediately, Putin displayed the ruthlessness that would define his rule. He crushed the Chechen rebellion with overwhelming force. He systematically dismantled the power of the oligarchs who dared interfere in politics, seizing assets and jailing rivals. He consolidated control over the media. The accidental Tsar was quickly forging his own absolute authority. For the Russian people, exhausted by the chaos of the 1990s, Putin offered a simple, powerful bargain: stability in exchange for political freedom. And for a time, fueled by soaring oil prices in the early 2000s, he delivered. Pensions were paid, living standards rose, and a sense of national pride returned. He had stabilized Russia. He had consolidated power. But the spy who came in from the cold never forgot the humiliation of 1989. His next move would be to rebuild the fortress, both internally and on the world stage. Now, we explore Putin's relentless campaign to restore Russian might. Having promised stability and a return to order after the tumultuous 1990s, Vladimir Putin meticulously spent his first 2 terms as president, from 2000 to 2008, rebuilding the Russian state from the inside out. This comprehensive effort involved consolidating power and establishing a new framework for governance, aiming to reverse the perceived decline of the post-Soviet era. His overarching goal was to forge what he termed a power vertical, a highly centralized and rigid structure of command designed to flow directly from the Kremlin. This system was intended to eliminate the chaos and regional autonomy that characterized the Yeltsin years, ensuring absolute loyalty and control across all levels of government and society. This ambitious project was more than just political restructuring. It was the strategic construction of what became known as Fortress Russia, a nation fortified against both internal dissent and external pressures. built on a foundation of centralized authority and national unity. The first and most critical step in this consolidation of power was to eliminate internal rivals, particularly the powerful oligarchs who had amassed immense wealth and political influence by acquiring state assets during the chaotic privatization of the 1990s. These figures were given a stark, unambiguous choice: stay completely out of politics and retain their fortunes, or face severe consequences for any perceived interference. The decisive battle in this campaign against the oligarchs was the Yukos affair, which culminated dramatically in the imprisonment of its CEO, Mikhail Khodorkovsky, in 2003. Khodorkovsky, once Russia's richest man, was arrested on charges of fraud and tax evasion, widely seen as politically motivated due to his growing political ambitions and funding of opposition parties. Following Khodorkovsky's downfall and the subsequent dismantling of Yukos, the message sent to other wealthy elites was unequivocally clear. Loyalty to the Kremlin and strict adherence to its political directives were the absolute price of maintaining their wealth and influence within the new Russian order. Any deviation would be met with similar, severe repercussions. Simultaneously with taming the oligarchs, Putin moved decisively to control the national narrative. Independent television networks, which had provided diverse viewpoints during the 1990s, were systematically brought under state control, effectively silencing critical voices and ensuring a unified message across the airwaves. Critical journalists, who dared to question the Kremlin's policies or expose corruption, faced increasing harassment, intimidation, and, in some tragic cases, even worse fates. This created an environment of fear and self-censorship, further solidifying the state's grip on information. State media outlets relentlessly promoted a carefully crafted message designed to foster national unity, often by portraying Western nations as hostile and threatening. Central to this narrative was the image of Putin himself as the indispensable leader, the sole figure capable of safeguarding Russia from internal chaos and external adversaries, thereby justifying his authoritarian rule. With internal control firmly solidifying and dissent largely suppressed, Putin strategically turned his attention to Russia's greatest natural asset, its vast and abundant energy reserves, particularly oil and natural gas. These resources would become a cornerstone of his foreign policy and a source of immense national power. State-owned energy giants such as Gazprom, the world's largest natural gas company, and Rosneft, a leading oil producer, were transformed into powerful instruments of foreign policy. Their operations and market reach were leveraged to exert influence and achieve strategic objectives far beyond mere commercial interests. Major infrastructure projects, like the Nord Stream pipelines, which transported natural gas directly from Russia to Germany under the Baltic Sea, were constructed with the explicit aim of increasing Europe's dependence on Russian gas. This dependence was designed to create significant political leverage for Moscow in its dealings with European nations. Disputes over gas prices and transit fees with neighboring countries, most notably Ukraine, were repeatedly and strategically used as a means to exert political pressure. These energy-related conflicts often coincided with broader geopolitical tensions, highlighting the weaponization of energy supplies. Through these actions, Russia effectively learned to wield energy not merely as a commodity to be bought and sold, but as a potent strategic weapon. It became a powerful tool to reward political allies and punish adversaries, particularly within its near abroad, the former Soviet republics, where Moscow sought to reassert its dominance and influence. Finally, fueled by the immense revenues generated from its oil and gas exports, Putin initiated a massive and ambitious rearmament program. This was a critical component of his vision to restore Russia's global standing and project its power effectively. After years of severe underfunding and post-Soviet decay that left its military in a dilapidated state, the Russian armed forces underwent a comprehensive transformation. They were meticulously rebuilt, extensively modernized with new equipment, and professionalized through reforms and increased training, aiming to restore their former might. This modernization effort included the development of new generations of advanced weaponry, such as cutting-edge nuclear missiles, sophisticated Yasen-class submarines, state-of-the-art air defense systems, and robust cyber warfare capabilities. These investments signaled a clear intent to project power across multiple domains. The message conveyed to the international community through this extensive military buildup was unambiguous and forceful. Russia was no longer the weakened, struggling nation of the 1990s. It had regained its strength and was prepared to defend its interests and assert its influence on the global stage. By the end of his second term, Putin had largely achieved his objectives. He had successfully rebuilt the Russian state, secured its vital energy resources, established firm control over the national narrative, and comprehensively rearmed its military. This consolidation of power was a monumental undertaking. The fortress was complete, standing as a testament to Putin's strategic vision and relentless execution. In the next part of our series, we will delve into how Putin began to project this newly restored power beyond Russia's borders, a trajectory that would inevitably lead towards the current geopolitical confrontations and reshape international relations. Fortress Russia was rebuilt, and Vladimir Putin felt ready to challenge the world order he believed had humiliated his nation. This marked the awakening of the bear, a period of increasingly assertive, often aggressive, foreign policy designed to restore Russia's sphere of influence. The goal was clear: to push back against perceived Western encroachment and re-establish Russia's global standing. A pattern of intervention emerged early, beginning with the brutal Second Chechen War, which cemented Putin's image at home as a strong leader restoring order. This conflict, starting in August 1999, saw Russia respond forcefully to Chechen fighters' incursions into Dagestan, showcasing a decisive military approach. Then, in 2008, Russia intervened militarily in Georgia, effectively recognizing the independence of two breakaway regions, Abkhazia and South Ossetia. This action served as a clear warning against NATO expansion into what Russia perceived as its vital sphere of influence. The West condemned these actions, but crucially did little to alter Russia's course, a response that Putin likely noted. The intervention in Syria in 2015 was a masterstroke, beginning on September 30th, as Russia decisively supported Bashar al-Assad's regime. This move projected Russian power back into the Middle East after decades, re-establishing Moscow as a major power broker in the region. It also demonstrated Moscow's willingness to use decisive military force and test new weapons and tactics, all while the West seemed hesitant and divided. Each intervention tested the waters, gauging the West's reaction, and each time the response was deemed manageable by the Kremlin. The annexation of Crimea in 2014 and the subsequent fomenting of conflict in Ukraine's Donbas region marked a point of no return for Russia's foreign policy. In February and March 2014, following the Revolution of Dignity in Ukraine, Russia annexed Crimea, a direct violation of international law. Putin framed this as correcting a historical injustice and protecting Russian speakers, leading to celebrations in Russia. Following Crimea's annexation, Russia fomented conflict in the Donbas region of Ukraine, leading to a simmering war between 2014 and 2022. Maps clearly showed the territory controlled by Russian-backed separatists, illustrating the forceful redrawing of European borders. The West responded with sanctions, but crucially, not with military force, a decision that had profound implications. For Putin, this likely reinforced his belief that the West was decadent, divided, and unwilling to pay a real price to defend the post-Cold War order. Especially in Russia's backyard, the limited sanctions, while damaging, did not deter his long-term ambitions. This set the stage for February 24th, 2022, when Putin launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Believing Ukraine was weak, NATO was divided, and the West would ultimately stand aside. It was a catastrophic miscalculation. He underestimated Ukrainian resistance, the unity of Western nations, and the devastating economic blowback that would follow. The swift victory he expected turned into a brutal, grinding war of attrition, with Ukrainian forces mounting a fierce defense. The West, far from fracturing, united to impose unprecedented sanctions and pour billions in military aid into Kiev. The Tsar's greatest gamble had backfired spectacularly, leading to unforeseen consequences on a global scale. In our final part, we will assess Putin's position today in late 2025 and explore the uncertain endgame of his reign. We left Vladimir Putin bogged down in a devastating war of his own making, a conflict that has reshaped global geopolitics and challenged the established world order. This war, initiated by Russia, has had far-reaching consequences, not only for Ukraine, but for Russia's standing on the international stage and its internal dynamics. Now, in October 2025, the conflict in Ukraine grinds on, a brutal stalemate costing thousands of lives on both sides and leaving a trail of destruction. The initial expectation of a quick victory for Russia has not materialized, and the war has evolved into a protracted engagement, characterized by attrition and limited territorial gains. This ongoing struggle has profound implications for the future of the region and beyond. Russia is economically isolated from the West, facing a barrage of sanctions that have severely impacted its financial systems and access to global markets. Its long-term prospects are dimmed as key industries struggle with technological limitations and reduced foreign investment. The Tsar's gambit, his aggressive foreign policy, has left him cornered, forcing difficult choices and alliances. What is his endgame in this prolonged and costly conflict? And what does the future hold for Russia after Putin, given the immense pressures and transformations currently underway? These are critical questions that demand a deeper examination of Russia's current trajectory and its potential paths forward. Faced with persistent battlefield setbacks and an ever-tightening web of economic sanctions, Putin's strategy has been to double down on the war effort, committing even more resources and political capital to the conflict. This approach reflects a determination to achieve his objectives, regardless of the mounting costs and international condemnation. Russia has transitioned to a full wartime economy, a significant shift in its economic structure. Military spending now consumes an estimated 30 to 40% of the federal budget, diverting vast resources from other sectors and impacting the daily lives of ordinary citizens. This prioritization of military production underscores the depth of Russia's commitment to the war. Factories across Russia churn out ammunition, tanks, and drones at an accelerated pace, fueled by clandestine support networks. These networks include critical supplies, such as artillery shells from North Korea, highlighting the desperate alliances Russia has forged to sustain its military operations. This reliance on external, often illicit sources demonstrates the strain on Russia's domestic production capabilities. Domestically, dissent is ruthlessly crushed, with strict laws and harsh penalties for any opposition to the war or the government's policies. Patriotism is enforced through state-controlled media and public campaigns, creating an atmosphere where questioning the official narrative is dangerous. This suppression of internal opposition is crucial for maintaining stability and support for the ongoing conflict. The official narrative remains one of Russia fighting a defensive war against an encroaching NATO, portraying the conflict as a necessary measure to protect national security and sovereignty. This narrative is consistently propagated to the Russian populace, aiming to justify the war and rally public support against perceived external threats. Putin seems determined to outlast the West, betting that Western unity and support for Ukraine will eventually fracture under the weight of economic pressures and political divisions. He is playing a long game, hoping that time is on Russia's side and that the resolve of its adversaries will ultimately wane. Economically and diplomatically isolated from the West, Putin has been forced into an ever closer embrace with China, a strategic pivot that has profound implications for both nations and the global balance of power. This shift represents a significant reorientation of Russia's foreign policy and economic partnerships. While Beijing offers a vital economic lifeline, buying Russian oil and gas at significantly discounted prices and providing critical technologies that Russia can no longer acquire from the West, the relationship is increasingly unequal. This dependence on China highlights Russia's diminished bargaining power and its need for alternative markets and suppliers. Russia, once considered a senior partner in its relationship with China, now finds itself increasingly dependent on Beijing's goodwill and economic leverage. This shift in dynamic reflects Russia's weakened position on the global stage and China's growing influence as a major economic and political power. Experts like Alexander Gabuev at the Carnegie Russia-Eurasia Center argue that Putin, in his relentless quest to challenge American hegemony and reshape the international order, may have inadvertently accelerated Russia's decline into becoming China's junior partner. Its vast natural resources and strategic position are now increasingly fueling Beijing's rise, rather than bolstering Russia's independent power. So what is Putin's ultimate legacy? He achieved his initial goal. He restored the power of the Russian state after the chaos and instability of the 1990s, bringing a sense of order and national pride back to the country. This restoration of state authority was a central promise of his early leadership. He made Russia a force to be reckoned with again on the world stage, projecting its influence and challenging Western dominance. However, the price for this resurgence has been immense, both in terms of human lives and economic stability, creating a complex and often contradictory legacy. His invasion of Ukraine has been a strategic disaster, leading to Russia's unprecedented isolation from the international community, strengthening NATO's resolve and unity, and potentially mortgaging his country's long-term future to Beijing. This single act has fundamentally altered Russia's geopolitical trajectory. He remains firmly in power, his grip seemingly absolute, with no immediate challengers to his authority. But beneath the surface, questions linger about the sustainability of the prolonged war effort, the long-term economic damage inflicted by sanctions, and the profound uncertainty of what happens after Putin, whenever that day may come. The Tsar's final gambit, this high-stakes play for power and influence, is still playing out on the global stage. Its ultimate consequences for Russia, for Ukraine, and for the entire world remain dangerously unknowable, shrouded in the fog of war and geopolitical maneuvering. Thank you for joining me on ATM.